Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. We're an internationally adept organization. We are broadcasting worldwide today, and which is very appropriate considering the topic of the conversation, and of course, because it's Earth Month. Not quite Earth Day itself, but we kind of expanded the event to cover the entire month of April. My name's Sandra Best. I'm the Executive Director for WasteWater Education. And assembled here on the screen, you will see several representatives from Operators Without Borders. And top above us is here Valerie Jenkinson. She is my cohort and partner and good friend, and also one of my board members. And she is the, I believe, chairperson for Operators Without Borders. And we got to know each other several years ago now, and we sort of have the same permit in that her organization deals with municipalities, with countries that are dealing with severe disaster management or impacts from natural or obviously man-made emergencies where they have structures and infrastructure that need to be addressed now. Our organization is looking for options for the immediate need. We are really looking for decentralized and on-site options, but also, we're not exclusively into that. It also includes an incorporation of green infrastructure and the amalgamation of municipal systems with decentralized options. And it's very appropriate, I think, to have this particular presentation during Earth Month. Anybody this week that was lucky enough to see this, and I'm going to try changing my background screens here. So let's keep our fingers crossed that it doesn't do anything odd. There we go. I'm actually based in Hawaii, so we really didn't see this. If we did, we saw a little sliver of it in the crack of dawn just after 6 o'clock. But for large sections of the world was the total eclipse, which some of us haven't seen for a very, very long time. And we're none of us going to really reveal our ages here. But in all of the years that we've all been in this business, there have been certain things that have happened in the world, I think, that have focused us on the aspect that from space there are no borders. That when we remember Neil Armstrong and the famous quote of looking back upon the Earth and seeing the moon rise for the first time, Carl Sagan's Blue Dot, and the promo that we put together for this presentation, that we live in times where people on the planet are facing unprecedented natural and man-made disasters. And it behooves all of us, I think, during Earth Month to support organizations like Operators Without Borders that exemplify, and I can't say this strongly enough, exemplify the best of humanity, which is, you have a problem, we will help. We're not going to judge you. We're not going to make a political decision of whether you are worthy or not. But in this particular instance, we have the expertise and we will come and help. And with that, I'm going to hand this off to Valerie and switch back to our background. And I'm going to mute my microphone, Valerie, and hand it off to you.
Thank you, Dendra, and thank you to WasteWater Education for being such a stalwart supporter for the last few years of Operators Without Borders. We are very, very grateful for all you have done for us. And I'm joined today by three of our volunteers. First off, in the top with the beard is Jason Mank. Jason started as a volunteer with Operators Without Borders even before we were Operators Without Borders, when we had a call from the general manager of Dawasco in Dominica after the hurricane saying, have you got anybody who could come and help us? We are desperate for help. And Jason was the first one to volunteer along with a couple of other people. And he's going to tell you about what he did in Dominica. So he's now on our board of directors. He was in the Bahamas after the Hurricane Dorian hit there so badly. And we'll talk to you a little bit about that as well. Below him, on my screen anyway, is Ian McIlwam. And Ian, who we call Mac, is probably our most prolific volunteer. And he's going to talk to you about the work he has done in the Caribbean on operational assessments, in laboratory training, and the work he's done in Ukraine and Africa. And although he's not part of this today, down in the other corner of the screen probably is Mike Goslin. And Mike is another one of our volunteers. All of these are actually wastewater professionals, all level 4 operators, very, very versed in operations of wastewater treatment facilities, large and small. Ian is a compliance manager with Region Down, but level 4 operator. Mike runs an award-winning facility, treatment center and collection center in Kelowna, British Columbia. And Jason runs several wastewater treatment plants in Ontario for Aqua. So I'm delighted that they're going to come and share some of their experiences with you today. Mike is really just an observer today, but feel free to chip in at any time, Mike. So let's see what we're doing here. There we go. So let's take a look at why we're doing this. Because there is, as we know, a global water crisis. And there are a lot of causes for this crisis. Every one of us is familiar with what climate change is wreaking on the planet. And I think that there's no question on the fact that climate change is real. There may be some people who are still a little skeptical, but for those of us, especially working in places like the Caribbean, we see the effects of climate change every day. Also, we have the natural disasters that happen that really affect the delivery of water services and wastewater services. War and conflict. We're working in countries like Ukraine and Haiti. We don't send our volunteers there, but we work virtually. But this also really affects, as I'll talk about later, about how we deliver water services. Wastewater, water and waste, they're all critically important and are contributing to this water crisis. In many countries, in developing countries where we work, there is also a real lack of water data. And this impacts how we deliver the water as well. For those of you working in first world countries, you'll know that you rely on data that's coming in. And when we look at what happened in Ukraine, they had really some good systems with GIS and SCADA. When the Russians left the what they call the unoccupied territories, they took all the equipment with them. So they're now based everything manually. And then there is a lack of international cooperation on shared water resources. And this is something that is going to be a big problem in the future. We talk about migration, but very often climate migration and lack of water is going to contribute tremendously to future, people moving and migrating from different countries. So let's just take a look at a couple of statistics. Many of you will be aware of these, but 771 million people in the world, 1 in 10, do not have clean water close to their home. And quite honestly, this is a disgrace. In the world, we should have the resources and the money and the expertise to deliver clean water to anybody around the world. It's even worse in wastewater. 1.7 billion people in the world, almost 1 in 5, don't have a decent toilet of their own. In many cases, there's still no latrines, no sanitation products at all. And then 2.3 billion people in the world lack basic hand washing facilities that have soap and water. And of course, as you know, that contributes to disease. that
We lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Sorry.
Yeah.
How we do? Yeah.
Yeah, somebody muted me. um, this is a quotation from Schuster Wallace from the United Nations University in 2008. It says that no other single intervention is more likely to have a significant impact on global poverty than the provision of safe water. That is a remarkable quote. And I think that that is why we in the water industry do what we do and why we have over 100 volunteers that have signed up with Operators Without Borders so far, because they recognize that we do have the ability to help in developing countries to alleviate some of the problems that are there and to help. And one of our mandates is to look at the sustainable goals, specifically around 6.2. Water and wastewater provision. So we work very, very closely with countries on their sustainable development goals and working towards solutions that can help those countries both after a disaster and in their regular workplace. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next few slides. So what's our mandate? So if I just quote from our website and our visions and mission statements, our mandate is firstly to provide volunteer certified water and wastewater operators like the people you see on the screen with me today and other trained professionals who can support utilities in developing countries following emergency and disaster situations to ensure the safe drinking water and wastewater management services are resumed. After a disaster, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of humanitarian organizations that flock in and do wonderful work. They bring in bottled water, they bring in shelter, they bring in temporary reverse osmosis treatment centers that can be set up to bring in, bottled water or, desalinated water in many of the cases in the Caribbean, for instance. But one of the problems is that we shouldn't need them for as long as we do. And the reason that they tend to be there a lot longer is because there is a need, because the water utility is often damaged, their staff can be traumatized, and so they often can only work sometimes a few hours a day because their families are at risk. They maybe don't have a house. Jason can talk to you a lot more about this as we go forward. So by going in and providing people like ourselves who can go in and work 8, 10, maybe 12 hours a day for a couple of week period and then send another team in, we can really help the utilities get back online and get water and wastewater services resumed in the towns and the villages in these developing countries. That's how we started. It was just doing disasters. But when we had so many volunteers sign up, it was incredible. And I've worked in the Caribbean for over 15 years now. And one of the things I am very conversant with is the lack of training of operators in developing countries. It's expensive, it's hard to come by. And we have so much knowledge. Mike, who was one of my instructors in my own private company long before Operators Without Borders. So I approached people like Mike and said, instead of going to Whitehorse or Northern Ontario to do training in January, how would you like to do the same training in the Caribbean? And they all said, that would be wonderful. I said, there's only one hitch, you won't get paid for it. And bless their hearts, they've all come through. And sometimes we've developed it in the country, and other times we've done it remotely. During COVID, we had to switch everything remotely. So we went to virtual learning, and people like Mike got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, did 3 hours of training before they went to their day job at their utility. That's the level of commitment we have from volunteers. So that's our mandate. So what do? First off, the disaster relief. We're not first responders. We don't go in there right afterwards because generally right after the disaster, there isn't any equipment to fix. And we'd only be in the way. We do not want to be a disaster tourist. We want to go in there and be able to get things back and running. So we have to wait till there's equipment that we can actually fix and parts and resources. So we deploy once there's equipment and accommodation. Because if you go in too soon, there isn't any accommodation for people, and you're actually taking resources away from people like the Red Cross and Water Mission who are in there trying to help right at the beginning of the disaster. We work with a lot of Caribbean agencies, and this is where we've done most of our disaster work so far, and we help those utilities rebuild. And then we do training and mentoring and assessment of utility operations. And what do? We have provided, on a very, very limited budget with no paid staff whatsoever, over $2 million worth of services that we've provided over the last number of years that we've been in operations, which is something I think all of us are very, very proud of. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason now, and he's going to talk to you about Dominica and what he did there.
Hi all, thank you for your time. I'm just going to give you some insight into some of the disasters that we have done when we went out on relief missions. Picture you see here, this is a picture of the downtown core of Dominica after they had a hurricane come and settle over their island, and it washed the tropical rainforest basically down the main river and right into their town. This disaster affected approximately 95% of the buildings, I believe it was, in and on the island. So everything was touched by this storm. And as you can imagine, all the people were touched by this storm. So as Val said, we come in about 3 months after. The whole wastewater facility had been shut down, 3 pump stations, and the main wastewater sewage treatment plant within the city of Roseau was also shut down and hadn't been running since prior to the storm. So myself and 2 other volunteers came in from Canada, and we worked with all the authorities on site and a number of the people that worked at the wastewater facilities. One of our volunteers went up into the mountains and started fusing together pipe to get water back to some villages, and me and the other volunteer stuck it out in the main town to try and get the wastewater facility up and running. So essentially we just went in and looked over all their equipment, cleaned it all up, got it ready so that the utility could come in and rehook up the power. As you can imagine, there wasn't power to anything. And we got the main facility up and running within the first week. And then we moved on to the pump stations. And we were able to get all 3 of their pump stations through the main town up and running, one of which had to transmit water across the river. And when the hurricane came along, it washed all the stone and debris down the river and broke all the pipes. So we actually brought in an excavator and found a couple 6-inch pumps on the island and excavated out the river and pulled down the water table, and were able to put inflatable blockage devices inside the collection system piping. And then we were able to pump across the bridge. And this allowed them to then open up their market. As you can imagine, everything was quite smelly from sitting for 3 months and getting stagnant and a lot of bacteria. So we really just wanted to get everything flowing. But it took some time, about 2 weeks, and we managed to get the facility up and running and get all the operators on site trained. That was something that they
Well, we seem to have lost Jason's feed for a minute. Till we get him back, Jason, you may want to just log in again. I'll keep on going, and then we'll get you back afterwards. This is a picture of an aerial picture of part of the destruction that was taking place. And as he said, it was at least 95% of every building was destroyed or damaged. And this is a picture of Jason in the Bahamas. We were asked by Water Mission to see if we could help build a reverse osmosis portable system in a sea can. And if Jason, it's a bit of a blurry picture. We don't go in with photographers and cameras. This is just taken with a cell phone. But if he looks a little weary, yes, it was over 30 degrees, very, very humid, and he's working in a sea can container, no air conditioning, obviously. But within a day and a half, he and Marcel, one of our other volunteers, was able to build 4 desalination temporary units in this sea can. Water Mission asked us if we could help when I suggested we might be able to, because they had a husband and wife team that were going to go in and do this with a manual. And we were able to do this in a day and a half. And that's just a picture of our 3 volunteers, Jason on my left-hand side, Marcel in the middle, and Glenn from Ontario, Edmonton, having a very well-deserved beer at the end of the day. We had nice accommodation there in a house, but in the middle of the night, as Jason will relate, there was a big rumbling and the house next door completely collapsed. So that was a little off-putting. So the other things that we do, and I'm going to ask Ian to take over for a little while, is we do training and mentoring. I owned a large water and wastewater operator training center in Canada, and I donated all the courses to Operators Without Borders. Our instructors like Mike and Ian volunteer their time, and basically we train on anything to do with operations and maintenance. But also we do troubleshooting and we do lab training. So Ian, take it over from here.
Thanks, Val, and thanks, Dendra, for organizing this and the nice introduction. Like Val said, Operators Without Borders originally was envisioned for disaster relief, and that was the initial, we'll just call them missions, or the first time we went out, and that was like Jason was explaining to you. And that is, it's very hard work. It takes a lot of knowledge, but the goal is to get there and assist these folks. And luckily for us, the disaster started to slow a bit, which was nice. We don't want to see disasters. We're certainly prepared to respond. So Valerie and others at Operators Without Borders really looked at our program and said, okay, how can we continually utilize, all these members we have and all this knowledge we have, and what can we do? So we started to look into mentoring and training and other aspects of what we could provide as professionals. So we looked at a lot of locations and we started partnering with utilities. And the goal was to offer training that they're not exposed to or might be too costly, to give them free training, but also to prepare them. So in a sense, take what they have and make them a little more prepared. So when they have a disaster, they can respond themselves and they may not need those outside resources. Most utilities, if not all, they're great to work with. They have hardworking staff. They're a little limited by resources sometimes, and just by the ability and funding. So what we do is we go in and we've gone to lots of locations. Belize comes to mind for me, and Barbados and Bahamas. And what we do is we partner with the utility and we provide the training there. And it's free of charge training. And we send down gentlemen like myself, or ladies as well, who work in the water and wastewater field. And we'll put on courses on health and safety, basic water treatment, wastewater treatment, lab courses, health and safety, which is a big component in a lot of these countries. And a lot of it is, it's not that the knowledge base isn't there, it's just they're so limited. For example, we've been to a lot of places and, we'll talk to someone. I love talking to operators, and I don't necessarily like being in the classroom. I want to be out there doing things live. But when you talk to them, it's like, hey, how's it going? Like, when's the last time you were trained? And the answer sometimes is, well, 10 years ago, I remember someone was lucky enough to be sent off the island. And that was it, one person. So with the Operators Without Borders model, we bring the trainers to them. And that way they can still continue their business. It doesn't cost them any hotel flight fees for their staff. And we can train an abundance of staff at once. So there's been some great experiences in that. And we really have partnered with them. And we've broadened it quite a bit. I think Val had on the bullet points there certification. So a recent a year ago, November, we did our first project kind of outside of the Caribbean, first one I was involved with anyways, in Kenya. And what we did was we partnered with the folks at Nakura Water Utilities.
Got some slides on that later on, Mac.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe just talk about Belize and Bahamas, if you would, first.
Yeah, no problem at all. What you see here is that's in Belize there, and that's some of the staff there. That's a good buddy of mine, the supervisor from there, and also the lab supervisor. So what we do is we do an assessment. So we actually do a field assessment with them. We look at their operational practices, and you can see you've always got a little notepad in your hand, and you're just making notes and trying to help them along. And Dendra, you said something in the introduction which I thought was really good. You said we won't judge you, and now that I've heard that, I that really is one of the models we go after, because we don't go there to tell anybody that the North American way is better or the Ontario way or whatever I do at my own utility. It's to look at the resource they have, the talent they have, and just try to increase that with education and training. And then, it's not that our way is better. And I've never been anywhere where I didn't learn as much as I helped teach them. It really is incredible when people are stressed for resources. They are just so imaginative, and I remember the first time to Belize, and there's another gentleman there, an operator from BC, and distribution operator. And we were out and we're looking at the tools that they handmade, and these are great tools. And we went back to our utility and said, "Hey, here's a picture. Can you make this? Because we can't buy this." And it's great. So it really is a learning partnership that we enter into with these locations. And the other thing is we don't walk away. Operators of the Borders has vast resources, and not everybody's an operator. And that's good, because we need the engineering. We need people that know about utility management, people that know about finances. And what we do then is, after we partner with the utility, we don't walk away. And if they have any questions, they have any needs, they can send them up. And if I don't have the answer and I was the contact for down there, I just send it out to the broader Operators of Borders group, and they come back with answers. So it really works well in a partnership format. That is Ron Enns, which Valerie mentioned before. Ron is a very qualified instructor, and that was a trip to Belize. And unfortunately, Belize had an incident where an operator was severely injured in a trench and passed away. So that was part of the training, just to kind of increase their knowledge around that aspect. And Ron did a great job on confined space, hands-on. And if you look around, you probably see 15 people in that room that now have had training, as opposed to one of those gentlemen being sent off to an island once a year. So it really was there. And Belize, you can see they're a very progressive utility in South America and Central America. And they have the tools, they have the resources, and they have the willingness. They just need that little bit extra training and help really getting up to where they want to be. So
we actually trained 120 people in Belize, all of their operators and their safety committee, in confined space, trenching and excavating, chemical spills, anything to do with safety. Ron did training, and we took them in groups of about 15, because some of the time we would go actually out in the field and do a confined space entry. But we actually trained 120 people there.
And also too, like Val mentioned, it is a larger utility, and I'd mentioned we don't walk away. We also try to provide a bit of a report, like a bit of an assessment on where you're doing well, where you may have to work on in the coming years, and a path forward. Like, here's some options of doing that. And then we revisit these locations and try to assist them or reassess, a few years later, saying, hey, this is great. We pointed out 2 years ago that there might have been some issues with your lift stations. Hey, you've really done a great job. You've cleaned them up. They're now working properly. So it really is a partnership. And that's just the happy folks at Belize there. So graduating class, I guess we can call it.
Yeah, and this is another, so sometimes it's small groups, but the training is very, very interactive. This is Chris Kerman, another one of our our level 4 operators, training a group in Barbados for their certification exam. And we work with Water Professionals International, and Mike, who's on the call here, was their chair at one point in time. We work very closely with them. We don't do the certification exam. That is done by the local authority that is provided through WPI, but we do the training that helps people do that. And both Mike and Ian have done the certification training. Mike, do you have anything? Because you did some very interesting work, and we got a lot of POs out of it, as well as certified operators in the Caribbean. And you did some virtual work during COVID.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Val. Yeah, I was, interesting during COVID. We had to pivot and change the way we address things or handle things. It was interesting that we had people logging on every day or every week. Like you said, I started at 4 in the doing that training before work, but that matched their time zone and easier for them to at the start of their day do that training. Very interactive, worked well. Not as preferable as face-to-face, but we were able to pivot during that time and make it work well. I think Mac had one interesting comment as well. Everything you've talked about is bang on. It's fantastic. There's also the networking component, and like Mac talked about, if I still get comments from people or questions, and they now have a connection with somebody else who then has connections out in our industry to reach out to and help support one another. And it even branches off to being friends on Facebook and seeing when their kids are born. And it's just it's a tremendous experience.
Thanks, Mike. And you mentioned about, come on, I just regress my slides here. Just bear with me 1 second. Next. Yeah, so this is the group. So you can see the whole training group there from the certification program that we did in Barbados. And the young lady who is in the green shirt, you can see my cursor just at the end, that's Nicole Austin. Nicole is on our communications committee for Operators Without Borders, does a wonderful job, but she passed her level 1 and 2 in wastewater and water, and is also train the trainer that we did. So I did a train the trainer course, and herself and the gentleman over here, Anderson Bone, they both, as I think there were 7 people who got their professional operators certification through WPI. So we're very pleased with that. And Mike mentioned about the training being interactive. My thing is nobody learns anything if they're asleep. And so we wanted to avoid the death by PowerPoint. This is an exercise that one of our trainees in the Train the Trainer course did in St. Lucia. This is part of the group, and they were all given a piece of paper with 1 word on it that describes something in the treatment process. And they had to get it in order. Okay, what's the first thing that happens? So they're up there and they're shuffling around. No, this comes before this. This comes before this. So they have a lot of fun as well, but they learn from it. So it's a great way to train. So other things that we do, we have developed 225 standard operating procedures. We have an actual standard operating procedure committee, and we give those away. And then we have volunteers that will take on a utility that has standard operating procedures, have requested some to customize them for their utility. And we're in the middle of doing disaster SOPs. We've had 3 workshops so far. So we're developing disaster SOPs. And the reason for it, I was approached by somebody from the Pan American Health Organization. He said, 20 years ago, I was in the Bahamas, and the big, huge water tank blew away because nobody had filled it up. If it had been filled up before the hurricane, it would still be standing. He said, fast forward 20 years in another, I won't name the utility, but he said they did fill it up. They forgot to turn off the valve, so all the water ran out and it blew away. So that's 20 years later. So he said, we need to give them standard operating procedures of what they can do before, a thing like a hurricane. And then another thing that we've been extremely involved with is incident command system training. And we have trained now over almost 500 people in incident command system training at level 1 in the Bahamas, Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad. We've gone up to level 300, which is a really high level. The fellow at the back, the tall fellow, is Greg Selecki, one of our incredible volunteers. And this is a group in Jamaica that are just looking very happy with themselves because they've just passed their level 300 incident command system training. And I'll pass it back to Mac now to talk about the Kenya situation.
Yeah, thanks, Val. And this one is kind of near and dear to me. I rather enjoy it. Val had arranged with a partnership, and we do partner a lot with others. We try that. We try not to walk alone, and we want to partner with folks. So we had looked at Kenya and certification. So we hooked up with Nakuru, which is the second largest city and a very proactive city there. And we went there in the November of 2022, and we did 2 weeks of training. We did a bit of an assessment on their facilities, and their facilities are a little rough, but the staff are willing and eager, and they do have resources. So we did training on wastewater treatment and wastewater collection. And then we're actually going back there again in about 2 weeks. And another gentleman is going to teach wastewater treatment and distribution. And the goal there was
water distribution, not
Yep.
wastewater distribution.
Oh, sorry, yeah, wastewater collection, yeah. I'm actually, hopefully, passport pending, I'm going back as well to cover, wastewater collection. But the goal there was to conduct some training, but the real goal was to get some certified operators, to actually have people write the formal exam, which is, the North American, let's say, version. And then also it gives them an opportunity. They can travel, they can work abroad, they can bring that knowledge within their own utility. And we were successful. We did have 2 individuals pass the exam. And that may seem small, but it was a class of water folks taking wastewater, and they did very well. They're very attentive. That's one of their systems there. That is one of that's the screen, their version of Headworks preliminary treatment for one of their plants. That's a combination mechanical and lagoon system. But that was a very good partnership, and there was a lot of support for that, and really eager to learn. You're not going there to teach in a fancy auditorium by any means, and that's what we like. We like getting right in there with the operators, whether it's in the field discussing things or back in the class, and that's kind of the style we use, and it's really good. And that is the fine gentlemen and ladies there from our first class. It's not all of them. Val's tucked in there too. That was our classroom. They did manage to, just before we got there, ordered a bunch of plastic chairs for the classroom. So everything went good, but that's a good partnership, and we do want to continue that. And not only in that one location, but broaden out. And the goal is to get certified staff and really to promote, water and wastewater professionalism across the world, really, or any utility we associate with. And the other thing that I really picked up on was either Val or maybe Mike or both mentioned it, is the train the trainer component. And that goes along with that, what I was saying, that we don't just walk away. Like, we're not consultants. We don't want to come sell you something, come a year later and sell it to you again. What we want to do is establish partnerships in education and foster those with the goal of sustainable. So when we go there, we not only put on the course, but as Val indicated, she had a slide there with one of the ladies who hosted that interactive session. We train the staff there to be able to put on that course themselves with a bit of assistance, or at least to be able to discuss those topics. And the goal is eventually we won't have to go there. We certainly want to, and we'll certainly help in any fashion. But the real goal is to educate people, to help with their skill sets, and then to be a resource, either virtually or in person. So
I will inject a little humor here,
Sure.
because Mac went over at the very beginning of the class, as we do, and introduced himself. And he goes up to this one fellow, puts out his hand and says, "Hi, I'm Mac." And the fellow put his hand out and said, "Jumbo." And so for the next 3 days, Mac had this name in his mind, and so he would call on Jumbo to answer questions, until we found out that Jumbo means hello in Swahili. So
Yeah.
we have some fun.
Yeah, the gentleman in the middle there, that's Evans, who I thought was Jumbo, and I thought, okay, your buddies are just ribbing you a little bit. You're, a large man and that. So yeah, I learned quickly that a bit of background education never hurts to learn a bit of the language, and it goes both ways. They taught me a few things, which was great.
Okay, and so now I'm going to move to Haiti. Haiti, as you know, has been in the news a lot lately. We have been working with Haiti. I've been working with Haiti since 2010 where I went there after the earthquake hit with a colleague of mine from Kelowna, and we did some training for them, left them a whole bunch of training manuals. But we are now working in collaboration with Rotary International, and it's to provide potable water to all citizens in Haiti by 2030. This is a huge billion-dollar goal. And we're working in 7 communes right now. And the ex-president of Barry Rassin, who started the hand wash program, he says, our dream is to bring potable water and good sanitation to the entire country of Haiti. Water is essential for good living conditions, and the people of Haiti deserve to have it. And we've made some tremendous progress there. There are teams, and we work with the Haitian people. But again, we don't have professional, full-time people working for Operators Without Borders. And my first goal is for the safety of our operators. So we haven't sent anybody there. Haiti is probably one of the more dangerous countries in the world right now. So we have done everything virtually. But one of the things that we have done is on non-revenue water. When in one of the communes called Pignon, they were at 90% non-revenue water. When I heard 90, I said, well, how old is your system? You know, thinking it must be 100 years old, as often it is in the Caribbean. It was 10 years old. So it was a combination of leakage and theft. Theft was very high. And they could easily tap into systems because the pressure was so low. So we looked at it, they'd got it down to 80% non-revenue water, but were stuck there. So one of our volunteers, Carl Yates, who's on our board of directors and was the ex-CEO of Halifax Water, whose non-revenue water leakage index, I think, runs about 2%. He did a one-day seminar for them on district metered areas. And then another one of our volunteers, Mike Taylor, worked with them on a weekly basis as a consultant. Within 6 months, we were able to reduce non-revenue water from 80% to 36%. And the goal is to reach less than 30. You know, I've worked in the Caribbean where non-revenue water of 60% is very normal. But to do this in 6 months, based on, you know, what we taught them, was just an incredibly proud moment. And for the first time ever now, having gone in and fixed all these leaks, and of course the systems are now pressurized, so if somebody taps into it, there is a gusher, and the mayor turns up at the person's house and demands that they stop, you know, that they, you know, can be prosecuted, we can turn their water off. So the community is behind us because we work very closely with the councils and the community. So this is tremendous. Now, unfortunately, as you've heard in the news, Haiti's in a terrible, terrible way right now. Pignon, I have 3 weekly calls with Pignon. Their word, when you say, how are things, they'll say it is quiet here, which means that there isn't any shootings or trouble. But what is happening in Port-au-Prince and around there with the violence is impacting the whole country. Fuel is one of the biggest problems we have. We were down to 2 days of fuel to keep our waters working. The hospitals have been down on fuel. So getting fuel is very, very challenging. It's about $30 US a liter right now. Oh, sorry, a gallon right now. So you can get it on the black market, but even that's problematic because you've got to transport it. We had solar panels delivered to Port-au-Prince. The broker disappeared with the money. They're stuck in customs, and we can't get them out, and we can't transport them. So it's very problematic. But for the first time in Pignon, they have water now 24 hours, 7 days a week. This is an incredible process. And we are working with 7 communes to do this. So we're very, very proud of the work that we've done there. The other place that we are working with extensively, and I'm going to bring Mac in on this conversation as well, we are partnering with WASH, the Water and Sanitation and Hygiene, UNICEF, the Global Water Alliance of Global Water Operators Partnership Alliance, which is based out of Geneva, and the Polish and Ukrainian water associations. And our role is looking at how they can rebuild damaged water and wastewater infrastructure. Again, I can't send anybody there. It's too dangerous. We will not put anybody into danger. but we have 2 calls a week with Ukraine. Unfortunately, in Western Canada, that they're at 3 a.m. in the morning, so gets a little bleary-eyed. But it's fascinating to see the resilience of the water authorities. And I was on a call. This may be a little faint, but this was a presentation that was made on one of our recent calls, and it talked about the different areas. Because a year ago, the Russians were targeting the electrical facilities and the utilities. Of course, that impacted water. This year, they are directly targeting our water and wastewater facilities. So in the Kramatorsk filtration station, there was an attack. It was destroyed in strikes. There was a loss of utility workers. So our brothers and sisters in this industry lost their lives. The services were disrupted to the entire geographic location. And the Watch Technical Cell has already undertaken identification of immediate needs of water utilities in key risk areas. And there's the partners we have there in the Wash are doing fantastic work. They do have professionals that are working there full time, and I just take my hats off to them. So this is in the Donetsk region, and you all know that the Donetsk was taken over by Russia. Is one of the really contested areas. In I can't pronounce the first name, but Dnepro and Kherson, regular shelling, continued emergency support, development of alternative water sources, and support of service providers. Pumping stations targeted, although they've managed to keep them in operation, but access remains difficult, close, obviously, you can appreciate, to the front lines. Utility personnel operate in 15-minute windows to implement repairs to deliver material to avoid drawing shelling. So they operate and then they go and shelter, see what's going to happen, and then they go back in. Very, very dangerous work, but they're committed to providing water to the citizens in the areas. So this is something that they live with every day. I was doing a workshop. We were doing an incident command system workshop for them. And one of the people came into the chat and said, really sorry, we have to leave. We hope we can come back really soon, but we're being bombed and we need to seek shelter. This is what we're faced with. So I just thought that these slides were quite interesting to show people what is going on there, because Ukraine tends to be a little bit out of, we still hear about it, but Gaza obviously has overtaken that right now. So one of the people broke my heart the other day because he said, have the people in North America forgotten Ukraine? And I said, no, we haven't forgotten. And we're working hard to try and do what we can, but no, we haven't forgotten you. But it broke my heart to hear him ask the question. And one of the other fellows said, a year ago, we were very, very optimistic that we were going to win the war by the end of the year. He said, we're no longer optimistic. He said, the aid coming from, some of the countries is not coming through as we need it. And we're running out of supplies, whether it's in supplies for the water areas or whether it's just for the war. Many of the people who are working in the water utilities work for half a day in their water utility, and then they pick up a gun and go on to the front line. So if you can imagine, what is happening there, it's just, it is really wonderful to think that we can do something. And Ian, do you want to just take over from here and talk about the work you've been doing, that Operators Without Borders has been doing there? First, maybe talk about the work you did on the CBRN.
Yep. Thanks, Val. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And as you see, we've talked a lot about the Caribbean, and now we're talking about Ukraine. And although Operators Without Borders, we're not a big financial charity in that sense, but we're starting to be recognized for our expertise and what we can bring to the table. So a couple things. Is in Ukraine, we sat on the Water Quality Technical Committee where, like Val said, we kind of assisted them in issues they might be having. But one area that we did, Greg Silicki, who you saw, kind of tall gentleman there, whiter hair, between him and myself, we put on a 2-day workshop on CBRNE, which is chemical, biological, radioactive, and nuclear events. It really opens my eyes, and it's an unfortunate thing is, through history, water has been a no-touch zone. like, invading armies, things like that. You don't mess with it because you need it for your own citizens. That is completely out the window now. And like Val said on the calls with the poor ladies and gentlemen from the Vodou canals in Ukraine, they're constantly being targeted along with the electoral grid. It really is a free for all now, and we see it in the States and we see it in Canada as well with the recent cyber attacks on any equipment. There was certain products that were coming out of Israel that they had targeted for cybersecurity attacks on our plants and things like that. So what they had reached out because the water utilities and their staff and the wastewater facilities were really concerned about the use of chemical weapons and other things, or just the fact there's so much bombing, like when the dam broke, the amount of facilities it washed out that were either chemical facilities or petroleum facilities. So now they're dealing with that in their water. So we hosted a 2-day workshop on how to identify these hazards, how to work with them, how to sample them, and try to foster that community there to have a lab and have knowledgeable people that they could react quickly. And then the damage to the citizens will be minimum, hopefully. But it was a very interesting area. It is very unfortunate, but that's where things have turned in the world. And it really is an important aspect. And that's something we promote. And as Val said, we can't go in the country. That's not how Operators Without Borders works. We don't put people in danger as much as we'd love to go there. But incident command system training was hosted in Poland, which was right next door. And the folks made the trip there, which is great. Decentralized treatment and technical training. Yeah, that's the real big thing will be the rebuilding of their systems. And that's where they're looking from assistance, either in new building techniques or maybe certain design changes in the regulations that will allow Ukraine to rebuild their system to the robust system it had.
So maybe I'll take over from on
Yeah.
this. So one of the things, as I said, we've trained over 500 people in the Caribbean, South America, Ukraine, and Poland in incident command system training. Now, if you're not familiar with incident command training, it is the system that is used by FEMA in the United States, is used by emergency response in Canada. I think, Ian, you probably are level 400, level 300 or 400 in incident command. Many of the water utilities go through the incident command system training. And we delivered this at their request to the Polish and Ukrainian water utilities. We had 110 people sign up in Ukraine for the CBRN workshop that you, Greg and Ian, put on. I thought we might get 100 sign up for incident command system training. Within a week, 335 people signed up. And then we gave that, and then we put on a training in Gdansk. We couldn't do it in Ukraine, but we did it in Gdansk with the Gdansk water utility there. They hosted it. But it cost us about, $25,000, $30,000 to do the training because we needed simultaneous translators. We paid for the Ukrainians to travel to Poland. And let me tell you, we sit on a training course. We don't think too much of it. Some of the people from Ukraine traveled for 26 hours across a war-torn nation. Sometimes they were walking. They were taking the train. There's no flights. And that was how much it meant for them to come to the training. So it says next steps. We just a couple of weeks ago did a level 200 virtually for Ukrainians who weren't allowed to travel to Poland to take the training, because if you're a man between 18 and 65, I think it is, you're not allowed out of the country generally. So we did another virtual 200 session. Again, with simultaneous translators. We had volunteers, some of them operators who are Ukrainian living in Canada or the United States, who translated our material. And we had another over 100 people taking the level 200 virtually. We are now looking at doing another level 300. I'm just working on raising money to do a level 300. Plus an emergency response planning workshop, and do that again in Gdansk and bringing people into that. Level 300 has to be done in person, so we're limited on the number of people we'll be able to train, but we hope that they can go back and spread this throughout the utilities. we had incredible comments coming back from the training that we did. It was very, very touching, because at the end of the 200 we did virtually, I asked the 2 leaders from the Water Association, you know, was this training useful? And they said not only was it useful, it was timely, it was relevant, and they wanted to put all of their operators through at least level 100 and then managers through level 200, because they just saw it as so useful to what they are going through. This is, you know, well, that's Greg just standing in front of the board talking about what was going on. And we customized, as we do, some of the case studies to what they're going through. Same as what we in the Caribbean, we customized the case studies to the water utilities there. And that's just a few of the people who were online. Couldn't get all of them. A lot of them didn't have the bandwidth to put a camera on, but we just had a great response, and very, very actively involved. A lot of questions that would either translators would translate, and Greg would answer that. So what is this system? It's designed to teach basic functions, concepts, and principles of the ICS system. And we're trying to really push this in water authorities, because it's not just for big disasters like a war or a hurricane. It's a chemical spill. It's a flood. It's things that water utilities go through every day. And Mac, I don't know if you want to just add anything to that, because I know that, you know, you use it.
Yeah, thanks, Val. One way of looking at it is from an everyday person is, if you saw a big event with the police in your neighborhood and they set up a command post, this is the structure they fall under. And what this does is, in disasters, water is a key component. Everybody relies on it, but we're not the only thing. You know, there's others looking after electricity, looking after secure safety. And the ICS gives us a common language on how to interact and know how to work easily with them. We can come into a country, and if they're using ICS, a utility, or an actual country, we know how to fit in, and we know how to do our job, and they know how to communicate and respect with us. So it is very good, and we promote it. We promote it at my utility, Durham region. You know, we make sure everybody's trained. In other utilities in Ontario, it's mandatory for all staff. So
Thank you. So before we go, Jason, you're back on, I think. Do you want to just finish us off and talk a little bit about the Bahamas and the disaster, because that's our prime thing? Talk a little bit, and then maybe you and Ian and Mike would just talk just 1 minute about why you volunteer and what it means to you.
Yeah, of course, I can speak to it. Sorry, my phone heated up on me as I was sitting on the side of the road here trying to do this. But yes, in the Bahamas, I spoke a little bit briefly to Dominica and how it was all washed out. Bahamas was a very different disaster, where we still had water coming through our pipelines, and you could go to one side of the island and get a Wendy's cheeseburger and Frosty, but you couldn't get fresh water out of the taps. So unfortunately, all their wells had become salinated because the water level on the one side of the island where they had all their wells raised by approximately 10 to 15 feet, flooded out all their wells and salinated all the wells. So we went in and just started over the first 2 weeks. Me and another operator went in and started testing all the wells, and came up with a protocol where we would test all the wells and see what the salinity rates were in each of the wells. And then we actually went to the opposite side of the island when we found out that they had some old abandoned wells over there, and we rigged up a portable pump and went over and started pumping these wells out, because a lot of the things didn't have electricity to them. So as soon as we identified wells that were flowing with good water, we had the authorities come in and then rehook up the electricity, and we put them back online. And we came up with a protocol there where we then brought in operators for 2 weeks at a time, teams of 3 or 4, and they would stay for 2 weeks and continue the process and looking at all the wells and ensuring that this was kept up. And we stayed there there was a number of teams there until we had to leave. I believe that was just before COVID. And unfortunately we had to pull out. But at both there in Dominica, it was a wonderful experience, which I know Mac talked about earlier, where I have friends that now contact me every Christmas, and we keep in touch when they have any other questions moving forward. They keep asking me when I'm going to come back to visit. And I just haven't gotten time to go on vacation yet, but it was incredibly moving to me as a water operator and wastewater operator. I was able to take all the information that I know in just my day-to-day job, and I know all the other operators that came in after us. It was the same kind of take back, is everything that we do day to day and we take for granted for what we do, we can give back to the people and help them and get them to a place where they can have fresh water and be able to flush the toilets again. So it was fantastic. And I feel guilty because I think I took more away from it than the people at those islands.
Thanks, Jason. Mac, why do you do it?
Very similar to Jason, I think, and I think that's probably a lot of the volunteers. And like Jason was saying about communications, just this morning actually, Evans, or Jumbo, I'll always know him as, he was on WhatsApp today asking me, you know, what's the weather like? Is it still snow there? And tell me about his farm and his, you know, his dreams of coming to Canada or progressing in his profession there. So there's that aspect where it's great. But to me, it really comes down to is I spent 30 years in water and wastewater. And, you know, I took engineering. I put a lot of effort into becoming a professional in it. You know, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not a ball coach. I'm not a, but I do have something to give back. And it feels really good. Like, and it's an equal sharing thing. Like I said, I've never been anywhere I didn't learn. And also too, it's an opportunity to see new places, meet new people, but in an like a rewarding personal manner. But it's also too, it's kind of like construction. When you work it and you build something, you look at it, you can see this in the utilities, and you can go back there and, you know, you can read stories, you can see it in the news of how well they're doing, and, you know, their cities are thriving and the health levels are coming up. It really is worth it. And there's such a broad amount of talent in Operators of Borders that whatever you have, Val is so good and knows so many people. She's going to put your talents to use in a good way, and that to me is important. You shouldn't waste these things, and I don't know. Similar to Jason and similar to all the rest of the volunteers, everyone gets something personal out of it. You know, the only thing we don't get out of it is money, and that is the way it should be. So it is. We are a charity. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Mike, last word from you.
Yeah, just quickly, I just to echo the other two gentlemen, I think a lot of us are probably in the volunteer game for the same kind of reasons. For me, I think I look around at the simple things in my day-to-day life that I take for granted and don't give it a second thought. Water, wastewater, power, like all these things that are there for us. And then you look on the news and you see what's going on around the world, and there's a lot of things that, quite honestly, I can't affect any change. But being able to put some of the skills and talent that I've learned over the last few decades to volunteer some time, help somebody else out that, can make their life a little easier, maybe provide them clean, safe water or clean, safe disposal of wastewater. Like, it just, a little bit goes a long ways. And I think if we all do a little bit, we can make a big change.
Thank you. So why don't you join us? A membership is $150 for 3 years, and that's Canadian, and can be on our website, or $50 for an individual. So that's basically a cup of coffee or a latte 3 times a year is what it costs to be a member. And this is how we fund sending our people to disasters or to do training. Be a volunteer if you like. Disaster rehabilitation. If you have experience giving training, love to hear from you. Or there is a donation button as well. And both in the United States and Canada, your donations are tax deductible. So we'd love to have you join us. If you have any questions, our website is there. And with that, I will thank you all for your time. It's wonderful to have you join us today. And Dendra, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, when we post this, I will post the QR codes for both of the donation buttons for those who are giving donations within Canada and for those who are giving in the United States, as we are now a fiscal sponsor for Operators Without Borders. If you give a donation before April 15th, which is tax season in the United States, it will count as a tax deductible donation. So you have 5 days to make a significant impact and take a tax deduction as well. One of the things I did want to make a note of is that we are, both of us, nonprofit organizations, and there's a saying that we have on our website that I think applies to both organizations, is that you make a living for yourself by what you earn, by your paycheck, but you make a life by what you give back to others. That your life, when people look back on you after you've gone, you want them to say, you know, they lived a good life and they made a difference. If the only thing that you are left with when you are gone is your bank balance or how much you left to your heirs, that's one thing. But if you can look back and make a list in the book of life of how many people you impacted, I think that makes a heck of a lot more difference. And this is your opportunity. Okay, you may not want to go to some of these places. You may not want to get all the vaccinations that you need to go to some of these places. Some of them are dangerous, as we've heard. But if you have skills, if you can use a computer, if you have education skills, if you have fundraising skills, get in touch with us. This is what we do. We all have something to contribute. And one of the things I did want to leave you with, and let me see if I can share my screen and make sure I do see something in the chat window here. And yep, everybody's email will be listed. If you agree, we will make sure that people can contact you. But let me leave you with an image here. And let me see here if I can do that. Oh, well, maybe I can't. Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can. There we go. And what you should be seeing there is the pale blue dot. I'm hoping that's what you do see. That tiny, if you can see my cursor.
I can see your cursor and I see some lines, but don't see a blue dot.
Well, if you can see the tip of my cursor, that's us.
Oh.
That is Carl Sagan's famous blue dot, seen in 1990 by Voyager. That was one of the last images of Earth that Voyager took. And you may remember that in March of this year, NASA actually reacquired a signal from Voyager, which is quite something, and managed to read, I do believe, hear the voice of Carl Sagan saying hello. And that was it, you know. And to think that everything that we have, everything that we've talked about, all the water that we've talked about today, is constituted right on the tip of that tiny little cursor right there. That's us. And in all the significance of the political events, in all of the turmoil and the war and the natural disasters that we talked about today, that's an image that people should carry with them for the rest of the day and every time that they watch this. Is we're a pretty insignificant bunch. And for the sake of picking up your cursor and sending an email, you can make a significant impact upon somebody's life that you may never meet, that you may never know what you did. But both organizations here are working together to hopefully change life for someone else. And if any of you have any closing comments here, feel free to chime in, and then we will close the recording for the day. And 5 days you have to make a difference. Pick up your cursor and make a donation.
Thank you, Dendra. And thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Especially our volunteers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Val.
Happy Earth Day.
Joe.
Yes, happy Earth Day. Bye-bye.